I never thought that the person I trusted to hold my hand while I walked through hell would be the one who lit the match. We are told from a young age that mistakes are human, that to err is part of life, but in the corporate world, specifically in the high-stakes financial sector where I built my career, a mistake isn't just a learning curve, it is a death sentence, and I made a mistake. A massive, career-ending, life-ruining mistake. Or at least that is what I believed for 6 agonizing months. I believed I was the villain of this story. I believed I was the fraud. And because of that belief, I handed the keys to my life over to my best friend, Chloe. I let her lock me in a cage of guilt, unaware that she was the one holding the blueprint for the trap all along. This is a confession of how I used my best friend's trust to hide my worst mistake, only to discover that the trust I relied on was the weapon used to destroy me. It started on a Tuesday in November, the kind of rainy, miserable evening that seeps into your bones. I was working late at the firm, a prestigious asset management company in downtown Chicago. I was a senior financial analyst, a title I had clawed my way toward for 7 years. I came from nothing, a small town, scholarship education, working 2 jobs through college. I didn't have a safety net. If I fell, I hit concrete. That fear of falling made me meticulous. It made me a perfectionist. I checked spreadsheets 3 times. I verified routing numbers until my eyes blurred. But that Tuesday, I was exhausted. My mother had been in and out of the hospital for weeks. My sleep schedule was shattered, and my mental state was fragile. I was processing a batch of vendor payments for our marketing department. It was routine, mundane. Click, approve, sign, send. The numbers danced on the screen. There was one invoice for a consultancy firm called Apex Strategy Group. The amount was $45,000. It was high, but not unheard of for a quarterly retainer. The approval code looked correct. The authorization signature from the department head was there. I was tired. I wanted to go home. I clicked authorize. The funds were transferred instantly. The realization didn't hit me until the next morning. I was drinking coffee, scrolling through the transaction logs for the daily reconciliation, and something about the vendor ID nagged at me. It was 1 digit off, just 1. I pulled up the master vendor list. There was an Apex Strategies and an Apex Strategy Group. The authorized vendor was Apex Strategies. I had just sent $45,000 to a shell entity that wasn't in our vetted system, likely a phishing scam or a ghost account that had slipped through the firewall. My heart stopped. I mean, literally, the room went cold. And the sound of the office, the phones, the typing, the chatter, faded into a high-pitched ring in my ears. I had just authorized a fraudulent transfer. In our company, anything over $10,000 required a secondary manual review, which I had bypassed because I was sure. That wasn't just an error, it was negligence. It was grounds for immediate termination and potentially a lawsuit if the money couldn't be recovered. I sat there, staring at the screen, my hands shaking so violently I couldn't hold my mouse. I checked the account status. The money was gone, withdrawn. It hadn't bounced back. It was real. I was done. Everything I had worked for, the reputation I built, the financial support I provided for my mom, it was all going to evaporate by lunch. I needed to talk to someone. I couldn't go to my boss, the CFO. He was a man who believed fear was a motivator. He would have security escort me out before I finished the sentence. I couldn't tell my husband, Mark, because the shame was too heavy to verbalize yet. So I did what I had done for 15 years. I went to Chloe. Chloe was the director of marketing at the same firm. We had met in the dorms freshman year of college. She was everything I wasn't: effervescent, confident, born into money but determined to make her own name. She was the one who did my makeup before dates, the one who held me when my dad passed away, the one who got me the interview at this firm. We were sisters in every way that mattered. Her office was 3 floors up. I took the elevator, hyperventilating the entire way. When I burst into her office, she was on a call, laughing. She took one look at my pale, ghost-like face, hung up the phone immediately, and locked the door. "Elena, what is it? You look like you've seen a murder," she said, guiding me to the plush sofa she kept in the corner. I couldn't breathe. I just stammered out the truth: the invoice, the similar names, the $45,000, the negligence. I cried so hard I thought I might pass out. I told her I was going to turn myself in, that I had to face the music before the auditors found it at the end of the quarter. I was ready to pack my box. Chloe grabbed my shoulders, her manicured nails digging into my skin. Her eyes were intense, focused. "No," she said firmly, "you are not turning yourself in. Do you know what they'll do to you? They won't just fire you, Elena. They'll blacklist you. You'll never work in finance again. What about your mom? What about the mortgage?" "I don't have a choice," I sobbed. "It's gone. The money is gone." Chloe stood up and paced the room. She was thinking. She always had a plan. She was the strategic one. "Listen to me," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I have access to the vendor portal because it was a marketing expense, right? It was assigned to my department budget." I nodded, wiping my eyes. "Yeah, it looked like one of your standard consultancies." "Okay," she said, "I can fix this. I can retroactively approve the vendor in the system. I'll create a project file for Apex Strategy Group. We'll make it look like a legitimate pilot program that didn't work out. We write it off as a bad investment, not a fraudulent transfer. No one looks closely at failed marketing pilots. We burn money on ads that don't work all the time." I stared at her. That's falsifying records, Chloe. That makes it worse. That's conspiracy. It's survival," she snapped, then softened her tone. "Elena, look at me. I'm the director. If I say I hired them, I hired them. Who is going to question me? I'm saving you, but you have to trust me. You have to bury the initial error log on your end, and I'll build the paper trail on mine. We lock this in a box and we throw away the key. Can you do that?" I looked at my best friend. She was risking her own job to save mine. The gratitude I felt in that moment was overwhelming. It washed over the panic. She was offering me a lifeline. I took it. I nodded. "Okay, I'll hide the log." That was the moment I crossed the line. I went back to my desk, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. I used my administrative privileges to alter the transaction tag, burying it deep within a bundle of legitimate expenses. I deleted the discrepancy flag. I wiped the digital footprint of my hesitation. By 5 p.m., the mistake was invisible. On paper, the firm had simply hired a consultant that didn't deliver results. It was clean, but inside I was dirty. For the first few weeks, the relief was euphoric. I hadn't been fired. My life continued. But then, the rot set in. Guilt is a quiet roommate at first, but eventually, it takes over the whole house. I couldn't sleep. Every time the CFO walked past my desk, I flinched. Every time an email notification dinged, I thought, this is it. They found out, but nothing happened. Chloe was calm. She acted as if nothing had changed. We went to lunch. We talked about our weekends. But there was a shift, a subtle tectonic shift in the power dynamic of our friendship. It started with small things. A week after the incident, Chloe came to my desk. "Hey, Elle," she said, leaning over my partition. "I'm swamped. I need you to finalize the budget report for my team's quarterly presentation. I know it's not really your job to do the formatting, but I'm drowning. Normally, I would have said I was too busy, but the words stuck in my throat. I looked at her, and in her eyes I saw a glimmer, a reminder. I saved you. "Sure," I said, "I'll do it tonight." I stayed until 9 p.m. doing her work. When I texted her that it was done, she sent back a heart emoji. 2 weeks later, it escalated. She made a mistake on her expense report. A personal dinner expensed as a client meeting. She brought the receipt to me. "Fix this, will you? Just recategorize it. I can't have HR breathing down my neck over a steak dinner." I hesitated. "Chloe, if I recategorize this without a client name, audit might flag it." She laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Audit? You're worried about audit now? After what we did with the 45 grand. The air left my lungs. She had said it. She had played the card. It wasn't a request. It was a command. I realized then that the secret wasn't buried. She was holding it. She kept it in her pocket like a loaded gun. "Right," I whispered, "I'll handle it." This pattern continued for 3 months. I became her servant. I did her projections, covered her administrative lapses, and even covered for her when she left work early to go shopping. I was living in a constant state of anxiety, bound to her by this terrible secret. I began to resent her, but I couldn't hate her because I was the one who made the mistake. I was the one who stole the company's money, even if it was accidental. I deserved this penance. That's what I told myself. But the human brain is a pattern-seeking machine. Even when you are drowning in guilt, your instincts still work. And my instincts as an analyst, the part of me that looks for discrepancies in data, started to wake up. It happened in March. We were approaching the end of the fiscal year. The big external audit was looming. The tension in the office was palpable. Everyone was tightening up their files. I was a wreck. I was terrified the external auditors would dig deeper than our internal team. I decided I needed to check the Apex Strategy Group file one last time, just to make sure Chloe's fabricated paper trail was watertight. I needed reassurance. I waited until the office was empty. I logged into the shared drive using the back-end access I had to the marketing folders. I found the folder Chloe had created. It contained invoices, emails, and a contract. It looked perfect. Too perfect. The emails between Chloe and the consultant were generic. Project update. Phase 1 complete. But as I scrolled through the PDF of the contract, my eye caught the address of the vendor. 1402 Oakwood Drive, Suite B. It was a generic office park address in a suburb about an hour away. It didn't ring a bell immediately. But I'm an accountant. I remember numbers. I stared at the zip code. I felt a strange itch in the back of my brain. I minimized the window and opened a personal browser. I searched the address. It was a strip mall, a mailbox rental place. Suite B was just a box. That wasn't unusual for small consultancies. But then I searched the business registration for Apex Strategy Group. It had been incorporated 3 days before I made the transfer. My stomach dropped. How could a vendor be set up 3 days before an accidental payment? I had assumed I made a typo, that I clicked the wrong existing vendor. But if this company didn't exist until that week, how was it in the system to be clicked on? I went back to the vendor master list logs. I dug deeper into the metadata that usually only IT looks at. I wanted to see who added Apex Strategy Group to the approved vendor list. I expected to see my own ID, assuming I had perhaps added it in a sleep-deprived haze, or maybe a phishing hacker had done it. The user ID that created the vendor entry was CMMKT admin, Chloe's admin credentials. I sat back in my chair, the room spinning. Chloe had added the fake vendor, Chloe. But why? I looked at the date. She added it the morning of the day I made the mistake. My mind raced, trying to reconstruct that Tuesday. I remembered being overwhelmed. I remembered Chloe coming by my desk earlier that day. She had brought me a coffee. She had been hovering. She had asked, "Are you doing the marketing batch today? We really need those vendors paid." She had been pressuring me gently. A horrific thought began to take shape. Had I really made a mistake? Or had the invoice been planted? I pulled up the original invoice image. I zoomed in. It looked legitimate, but then I cross-referenced the project code. It was a code used for discretionary spending, which usually didn't require as many flags. I needed to know who owned Apex Strategy Group. I paid $50 on a public records site to pull the LLC details. The registered agent was a lawyer, but the principal officer was listed as Lucas Vance. Lucas. The name tasted like bile. Lucas was Chloe's ex-boyfriend, the one she broke up with a year ago. Or so she said. They had a volatile relationship. He was a struggling developer, always looking for seed money. I sat in the dark office, the glow of the monitor illuminating my horror. It wasn't an accident. It was embezzlement. Chloe had set up the shell company with Lucas. She had input the vendor into the system using her credentials. She had slipped the invoice into my batch. Digital injection is easy if you have access to the upload folder. She knew I was exhausted. She knew I was distracted by my mom's illness. She knew I would click approve. And when I did, she didn't just get $45,000. She got leverage. She got a slave. She got me. The betrayal hit me harder than the fear. I bent over my trash can and dry heaved. 15 years of friendship. The nights we spent studying, the secrets, the tears. She had monetized our friendship. She had calculated the exact value of my trust and sold it for $45,000 and a promotion. Because that was the other thing. She had used the success of her projects, funded by skimming budgets, to secure a VP nomination. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run up to her condo and shake her. But I couldn't. I was still complicit. I had covered it up. If I went to the police now, she would say I was in on it. She would say I cut the check and she helped me hide it because she was a good friend. She had the emails where I thanked her for saving me. She had the texts. She had me checkmated. I went home that night and didn't sleep. I looked at my husband sleeping beside me, so peaceful, unaware that his wife was trapped in a criminal web spun by her best friend. By morning, the sadness had burned away. All that was left was a cold, hard rage. I wasn't going to let her win. I wasn't going to let her destroy me. I needed to turn the tables, but I had to be patient. I had to be smarter than her. The next day, I went into work. I forced a smile. I brought Chloe a latte, just like I always did. "Thanks, babe," she said, not even looking up from her phone. Oh, by the way, I need you to sign off on these travel expenses. I went over the limit again. No problem, I said, my voice steady. I'll take care of it. I went to my desk and started my own investigation. I needed proof that she orchestrated the fraud, not just that she benefited from it. I needed to prove intent. For the next 3 weeks, I played the part of the broken, submissive friend. Meanwhile, I was building a dossier. I recorded our conversations on my phone, hoping she would slip up. I didn't get a confession, but I got snippets. You know you'd be in jail if it wasn't for me, she said one afternoon when I hesitated to approve a shady vendor. I know, I replied, ensuring the recorder in my pocket caught it. I'm just scared about the audit. What if they trace the IP address of the vendor creation? They won't, she scoffed. I used a VPN when the vendor was set up. She caught herself, but she had stumbled. I used a VPN. It was on tape. It wasn't enough for a court, maybe, but it was enough to start a fire. The real breakthrough came when I got access to her physical calendar. Chloe was old school in one way. She kept a physical planner in her desk drawer. She thought I was her loyal servant, so she often left her keys with me when she went to lunch. One day, while she was at a client lunch, shopping, I opened her drawer. I flipped through the planner to November. On the Tuesday of the theft, she had written, LV transfer confirmed, LV Lucas Vance, and beneath that, E hooked, E Elena. She had written it down, hooked, like a fish, like a victim. I took photos of the pages. My hands were trembling, but not from fear this time. From adrenaline. I had the pieces. Now I needed the kill shot. The annual audit began on a Monday. The auditors were a serious bunch from a Big Four firm. They set up in the conference room, demanding files, scrutinizing every penny. Chloe was calm. She believed her fake paper trail was perfect. She believed I was too terrified to speak. On Wednesday, Chloe called me into her office. She closed the blinds. Her face was serious. Elena, I heard a rumor, she lied. I knew she was lying because she touched her necklace, a tell she's had since college. The auditors are flagging the marketing accounts. They're looking at the consultancy spend. My heart hammered, but I kept my face frozen in terror. What? What do we do? I think they're going to find it, she said, looking me in the eye with fake sympathy. And if they trace it to you, it's prison, Elle. I can't protect you if the feds get involved. Oh my God, I whispered. What do I do? I have a plan, she said. Resign. Today. If you leave before they file the report, they might drop the investigation into a specific employee error to avoid the legal hassle. They'll just write off the loss and move on. I can get you a severance package from my budget. 6 months' pay. You walk away, you start fresh somewhere else. I stared at her. I saw the cruelty in her eyes. She wanted me gone. I was a loose end. If I resigned, I looked guilty. I took the fall, she kept the money and the job. It was the final betrayal. She wasn't just using me, she was disposing of me. Okay, I said, my voice breaking. I'll write my letter. Good girl, she said. Bring it to me. I'll hand-deliver it to HR to make sure they process the severance. I went to my desk. I typed a letter, but it wasn't a resignation letter. I printed out the transaction logs showing she created the vendor. I printed the corporate registry showing Lucas Vance. I printed the photos of her planner. I put the audio recording on a USB drive. And I wrote a detailed executive summary explaining the scheme, how she created the shell company, manipulated the vendor list and used my emotional state to trick me into the cover-up. I didn't bring it to Chloe. I waited until 2:00 p.m. The CFO, the CEO, and the lead external auditor were in the main boardroom reviewing the preliminary findings. Chloe was there, presenting her marketing successes. I walked to the boardroom. My legs felt heavy, but my head was high. I knocked and entered. The room went silent. "Elena?" The CFO looked annoyed. "We are in the middle of a session." Chloe turned, her eyes widening. She shot me a look that said, "What are you doing? Get out." She mouthed the word, "Resign." "I apologize for the interruption," I said, my voice projecting clearly across the mahogany table. "But I have evidence regarding a fraudulent transaction of $45,000 that is currently concealed within the marketing budget. And I believe the director of marketing is about to frame me for it." The silence was deafening. Chloe stood up, her face turning a violent shade of red. "Elena is having a breakdown," she said quickly, forcing a laugh. "She's been under a lot of stress. I was actually just helping her process her resignation. She's not well." "I'm perfectly well, Chloe," I said, walking to the head of the table. I placed the stack of documents in front of the lead auditor. "This is the Apex Strategy Group file. You'll find that the company was created by Chloe's associate 3 days before the transfer. You'll find the metadata proving Chloe added the vendor, and you'll find a recording of her admitting to using a VPN to hide her tracks." Chloe lunged. "This is insane. She's lying. She made the mistake. She authorized the payment." "I did authorize it," I said, facing the room, "and I hid it. I take full responsibility for my failure to report the error immediately. I let fear control me, and I breached the company's code of ethics. I am ready to accept the consequences of that. But I will not accept the blame for a theft I didn't commit." The auditor was already reading the papers. He looked up at the CEO. "This looks like a substantiated paper trail. The vendor registration dates don't match the project timeline." The CEO looked at Chloe. "Chloe, sit down." "She's jealous!" Chloe shrieked, her mask slipping completely. "She's always been jealous of me. I gave her a job. I saved her." "You didn't save me," I said quietly. "You trapped me." Security was called. The next hour was a blur of interviews and data retrieval. Once the IT team pulled the specific server logs I pointed them to, it was over. They found the link to Lucas Vance. They found the patterns in Chloe's other expenses. It wasn't just the 45 grand. She had been skimming smaller amounts for 2 years. Chloe was escorted out of the building by 2 security guards. She didn't look at me as she passed. She just stared straight ahead, her face a mask of ruined pride. I watched my best friend, the person I had loved like a sister, disappear into the elevator. I didn't walk away unscathed. I was placed on immediate unpaid suspension pending a full investigation. I had to sit through grueling interviews with legal counsel. I had to admit to my own dishonesty in hiding the log. It was humiliating, but in the end, the firm decided not to fire me. My cooperation exposed a much larger ring of fraud that saved them hundreds of thousands of dollars. They saw that I had been manipulated, though they made it clear I was on thin ice. I was demoted from senior analyst to a junior auditing role, and I was put on a probationary period for 2 years. It was a step back, a huge one, but I was free. I walked out of the office that evening, the cool Chicago air hitting my face. I didn't have my best friend anymore. I didn't have the prestigious title, but the weight was gone. The heavy, suffocating blanket of secrets was lifted.